Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 208.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on professional club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques. Changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time. A few weeks ago, good friend David Orr, Golf Magazine Top 100 instructor and creator of the Flat Stick Academy, said, "Let's do a new podcast." I came up with an idea for one, and he quickly agreed. We decided to call it The Process of Learning, and it's largely about him applying the process he uses to teach his putting students to his efforts to improve his skiing. This is an amazing episode, and if you're someone who is serious about improving your putting skills and putting performance, a must-listen for you. Yes, it's definitely longer than most episodes, but it takes what it takes. Enjoy.
Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf, changing golfers' lives, one golfer at a time.
Hello, this is Tony Wright with episode 208 of the Golf Improvement Podcast. And welcome back for the eighth time. Eighth time. Can you believe it, David? Golf Magazine Top 100 teacher and creator of the Flat Stick Academy, David Orr in Southern Pines, North Carolina. And tonight we're going to do something. I won't tell you what it's going to be, but it's going to be about the process of learning. And you're going to learn some things, I think, that are going to be really valuable if you're going to become a great learner, whether it's golf, putting, whatever. Some of the real fundamentals that will help you. But I just wanted to mention one thing first, David. I went back and looked at some of our notes from other things, and boy, I saw that word adaptability from the practice plan, and it reminded me of December.
So I think what's important is people talk about being consistent.
Yeah.
I think consistency is for short putts.
Yeah.
And I think adaptability is on much longer putts. So you have to be both consistent and be able to adapt.
And you said that in those notes because I wrote it down tonight. Exactly those words.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to get talking a little bit about the process of learning. And, we'll first talk about it from a golf standpoint. We're all trying to get better, right?
Right.
And what's interesting is, I'm 54 years old, and supposedly you're supposed to get worse as a putter as you get older. And I'm actually way better now than I was when I was trying to play the mini tours. So how did that come about? That makes sense. How did I actually get better?
Right.
Versus worse. And what's interesting is, being a coach is one thing, but becoming the student is very interesting after being a coach. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute when we change sports.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, being the student has got to help you be a better coach.
Yeah. Well,
if you apply the right things, I guess, right?
Yeah. So it is a process of learning. Process takes time. Everybody's at a different place on their journey, if that makes sense.
Yes.
We're on different paths, but trying to get to the same place. But what's interesting is I grew up skiing from age 4 to 21. And then I stopped skiing when I turned pro to play golf because I didn't want to tear an ACL or break a thumb. Skier's thumb is a very common injury.
Huh.
And that's why I have a very hyperextended left thumb. So that was something that I hurt myself growing up, is skier's thumb. So even though it allowed me to palm a basketball with small hands, but that's why my left thumb joint is kind of kind of catawalky. But I didn't ski for 30 years.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is you said you've heard a lot of, skiing parallels in some of my videos, and there's a reason for that. So, but so getting better with putting, I basically took the 7 principles of putting. If you go to my website, you got the mental skills, the putting skills, the stroke fundamentals, your putter, generating speed, managing direction, and strategies or movement strategies. So you got those 7 principles. So what's interesting is I hadn't skied for 30 years and I started back skiing, but I took the same 7 principles and just substituted skiing stuff. So I used the same learning process that I coach in golf, right?
Yeah.
How I teach my students, how I train my coaches, and I applied the same principles, just applied to skiing. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in other words, I substituted, instead of like with putting, the 4 skills, you have to be skillful, right? Read, speed, mind, and aim. Well, those 4 skills in skiing are balance, edging, pressure, and rotation.
Is balance the number 1, by the way?
Yeah, you gotta stay on your skis, right? In order to edge, right?
That's it. Yeah, that's another thing right now that I'm learning in my rehab for my knee surgery.
Yeah,
balance is difficult.
Yeah, so you have to have balance front to back and laterally side to side.
Right.
In skiing, and in skiing, you're not always balancing against gravity, meaning that your base of support is staying underneath your center of mass. But in a ski turn, okay, you're actually balancing against centripetal force, the turn. Yeah. So anyway, but I just wanted to let you know there's the 4 skills in putting that need to be constantly practiced. Constantly. You go to a tour event, a PGA Tour event, these guys are working on their read. Some of them use aim point. And with aim point, you can feel the break direction, feel the slope with your feet. Well, that's like in skiing. The number 1 principle in skiing is the slope. And straight down the slope is called the fall line.
Yeah.
And then in skiing, you have to judge where you are on the slope so that you can turn. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So what's funny is skiing and putting have judging slope in common.
Yeah.
Putting greens, Bermuda versus bent, fast versus slow is like snow versus ice. So you're dealing with friction. So people that are very good skiers are very good at judging slope. In other words, if they were standing on the slope, the ski that's lower, right, versus the ski that's higher is the same thing as aim point. You're just feeling which foot's lower. And the lower foot, the putt breaks that direction. That makes sense? Yeah. So they have that in common. That makes sense? So judging slope and judging speed on the slope and judging angle on the slope, it's perfectly in common with green reading. So I spoke at the Vermont PGA. I did a golf and ski school up in Burlington, Vermont. Yeah. Yeah. And we talked about that if you're a skier, you intuitively understand slope. So green reading should be the best part of your skill set without question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Right. Yeah. And then what's interesting is skiing is an arc game. And the technique is arcs pretty much. I mean, you can glide straight, but you're primarily turning. You're either carving or sliding. But getting back to the process of learning, I took the same approach that I do when I teach, and I became the student. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And I wanted to see how good I could get. I wanted to see if I could just get to as good as I was.
Okay.
And I wanted to see how long it would take. And then obviously I wanted to have fun while learning. That was the main thing. So those were the 3 things in my process of learning. How good could I get? How long would it take? And am I having fun while going on this journey? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of go through 10 points fairly quickly. but this might be able to relate to golfers out there. So when I got on, the number one thing I did was I got on the internet and I wanted to find the best information on the internet on skiing. And I wanted to find out, most importantly, what information was relevant to me, because there's a lot of irrelevant information. And if you think golf instruction's way ahead of skiing instruction. Trust me.
Oh my gosh!
Like miles. Like
Yeah.
I think back in I'm a Mac O'Grady guy and a Golf Machine guy. So back in the 1990s, 80s, and 90s, there were maybe, I don't know, 10 to 20 really good instructors that really knew what they were doing and could not only explain it, but demonstrate it. Because that's a key thing here, is you need to be able, in my book, you have to be able to demonstrate it. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Can't just say, okay, I'm going to do a straight back, straight through stroke, and then the putter's arcing. And I'm going to look at you like your street cred is just gone.
Yeah.
Because you just said you're going to do a straight back, straight through, and you just arced it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was always one of my litmus tests when I test instructors is, okay, show me how you do it. And if they can't demonstrate what they're saying, I just try to end the lesson as fast as I could and I leave.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find the best information and then what was relevant to me. So there's a lot of putting instruction out there, right? But how much, that's the question you have to ask yourself. What is relevant to you, to your stroke? Do I need to think about the line on the ball and the line on the putter and taking it straight back and keeping the face square and rocking my shoulder? Do I have to be thinking about all that stuff? You know, how much of it's relevant?
Yeah.
You know, so that was number one. So I found the best ski forum. It's called Ski Talk, but if you go on the internet for golf, it's probably GolfWorks, right?
Right.
Have you been on GolfWorks?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I get stuff from them all the time.
Yeah. So Ski Talk is like GolfWorks. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And then I started watching a lot of YouTube videos, and I want to find the guys. So Suzanne Pettersson's husband, Christian Ringvold, told me this. He goes, study just what the best do. He goes, there's a lot of skiing information out there. Just study what the best do. So I literally found a few skiers, technical skiers, and they're all kind of buddies. You know what I mean? They all ski together. So they produce their own content. You know what I mean? And they put it on YouTube, and I'm like, man, those guys are good. And then I found out this one guy, and I'm like, man, that guy's really good, and he really knows what he's talking about. Like, he's doing exactly what he says he's doing. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And I found out that he had a 3D background. So you know me.
Yeah, right.
My mentor, Dr. Rob Neal, trained me in 3D. I'm not a biomechanist, but I do have a background. I took graduate level biomechanics classes here at Campbell. I took anatomy. I took kinematics. I took kinetics. So I had a introduction. So I found a guy in skiing that does everything by explains things by biomechanics. And so not only could he explain it, but he could do it.
Yeah.
And that's the point that I want people to think about. When you go to take a lesson from a putting instructor, watch him putt, watch his stroke. And then, do I want to learn from this guy or not? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So once I found this, I found out that Tom did online lessons. So he has his website like I do, Flat Stick Academy. His is Big Picture Skiing. So he's got all these videos. He's got a couple hundred videos, and I've watched pretty much every single one of them, some of them 2 or 3 times. And the people that have benefited from my website, like yourself, you just said you went back and watched some videos. I mean, Dennis Corley has watched every video on my website at least 2 or 3 times and taken notes.
Yeah.
And there's people that have gone on my website, looked at one video and canceled their membership, which is fine with me.
Sure.
Okay. My website's not for people looking for a little tip.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's for people that want to learn, which is what this video is all about. So I don't want to be like selling on this podcast, Flat Stick Academy, but I am showing you the parallels that I found a coach just like me, if that makes sense, just in another discipline.
Yeah. Simpatico.
Yeah, simpatico. I like that. So I started sending him videos. My wife would video me coming down the slopes, send him video, and then he would do a motion analysis. And then I would sign up for a 1 hour online session. Now, I do online lessons as well, especially during COVID there.
Yeah.
Man, I found out all I needed was a person to do FaceTime with me, film face on down the line with the camera at about 4 foot high. If I got their camera angle at the right angle, and then they're putting in their backyard, in the putting green, or they're putting in their little indoor studio, or they got their well putt putting mat. I was given, during COVID, I was given maybe 6, 7 online lessons a week. And what's funny is the people that took online lessons from me and have been on my website come and take a private lesson from me in person. It's like I've known this guy for years. It's like I've been working with him for years. They know the lingo, the terminology. They understand what you're saying, because the online information kind of prepares them. It's kind of like a little prep course.
Yeah, it's but for both of you.
Yeah,
a little bit because you've seen it. Yeah,
yeah. So, and it's like you guys that are certified instructors, right? You've seen the videos. You come to the conference. You understand what we're saying. You understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
So you guys are more on the cutting edge of the information in putting. So we have over
80 now.
Something like that? We got more than that. The new website, we just haven't. We've gone away from a navigation system with a map to just a list. So I've got to update some of the lists, but we've got quite a few instructors, right? So, and even more that attend the conference in December. So, so once I started taking some online lessons, and then I started doing a lot of dry land training, meaning at home. Like you can do a lot of your technique work at home. You don't need to go work on the technique necessarily at the putting green. Matter of fact, when you get to the putting green, I'd rather you be working on your skill set.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And then calibrating your setup and your technique. And then learning to run your process in your routine. So when you go to the putting green, when I go to the putting green to practice, I'm just working on skill work because I can't hit 50 footers in my house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I can hit putts down the laser line. I can work on my setup with my putting mat. You know what I'm saying? I can do all the technical stuff at home. So that by the time I get to the putting green, I'm just working on my skills and really working on my mental skills. Something I neglected.
Yeah. You're not recalibrating yourself when you're.
Yeah.
When you're at home, you're getting your setup the way you want it, and you can get ball position and all those kind of things.
Yeah. Any changes I make mechanically are done at home.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So I've got
sure.
I got 2 or 3 strokes that I use, but I do that all at home. That makes sense. And then which stroke feels the best is the one that I use. That makes sense. So I have a trail-sided stroke, which is inside down the line, paying attention to the right forearm's angle of approach and the shaft tracing. So that's more my trail-sided stroke. I use an offset putter, like a ping answer, right? Style for that. And then I have more of a shoulder-driven stroke where the center of my shoulders are turning around that point, and I'm just trying to keep the sweet spot in sync with that. That's more of a shoulder-driven stroke. And so I've got a couple different techniques. I have a couple different strokes. I don't just have one.
That's new. That's news to me, by the way. So there you go.
Well, I think Nicklaus and Tiger and all those guys have a couple different feels, if that makes sense.
Right.
And for me, I've just self-organized what the feels are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're not you wouldn't be able to see the difference unless I told you, look for this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of at home. So basically what I'm saying is technique should be done at home if you can, or in the hotel room on the road. So that when you get to the putting green, it's about skill work and process and routine.
Yeah.
And mental skills are where I neglected. If I had to do this all over again, I would not have spent so much time working on trying to perfect my stroke.
Hmm.
Yeah, because what's interesting is, I don't play as much as I used to, but I went out and played last year 4 times. I should have stopped after the first round. I shot 2 over on 18 holes. Boom. Hadn't played in a year. Putted fine. Everything was fine. And then obviously after that, you have expectations and score gets higher. But anyway, the interesting thing is putting is my strength has always been driving the golf ball, always above average length and extremely accurate. But now I can putt well. The part of the game now that isn't as sharp as it could be is really short game. And if I'm honest, the short game, meaning chipping, pitching, that kind of stuff, has driven me away from playing the game. Because if I could still chip and pitch at a high level, I'd probably still be playing because I don't care how I hit it, because I'm going to get up and down anyway, especially as good as I'm putting. Because if you drive the ball well and putt well, the days you hit it good, you should go low, and the days you don't hit it good, you still shoot even par.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yes.
So Rich Hunt, who's a good friend of mine, said that the power to putting principle is the key. Guys who hit it the farthest and putt the best tend to win. And we're seeing that now. The longer guys are, certain courses.
Well, you see Rahm sometimes is unbelievable.
Yeah. When Rory's hitting it good, putting good, watch out.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, at home, right? Then, every time I go to the ski slope, so my wife she's a intermediate. She's not a beginner, but she's an intermediate. Okay.
Yeah.
We always start on the green slopes. And she's like, well, don't you want to go up to the blacks? I'm like, well, I can ski the blacks, but I can't work on my fundamentals on a black. Do you know what I'm saying? I'd have to be a World Cup racer to carve a black run to be able the forces that you feel. That's why these guys' legs and backsides are huge, because they can hold the force. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I go to the greens with my wife. So say I take 20 runs that day, right? I'm going to ski for 4 hours. I'm going to spend 10 runs with my wife, and I might be doing wedges, pizza. You know what I mean? I might be skiing with my poles out in front of me. I might be working on certain fundamentals like balance, edging, pressure, and rotation. And then once those are solid, then I go rip arcs on the blues, if that makes sense. And I might ski some blacks.
Yeah.
But I always start with my skill set. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Always.
With locking it in. Working to improve it. And
I'll tell you what. So one day we went, remember I told you that trip to Vermont PGA?
Right.
So we skied with a World Cup downhiller, Tommy Biesmeyer, and his girlfriend, Claire Brown, who won the NCAA championships at Denver. And so they go right straight to the top in the gondola with my wife. And I had no problem with it, but I'm looking at my wife going, there's not going to be any greens up at the top. So I'm like, that for them, they just free ski right off the bat. But so, we skied a few runs with them, and I took my wife over to the greens. And then while she skied on the greens, I worked on my stuff. And then later on, I went and ripped it again. So it's like, to me, it's kind of like preparation. So there's practice, and then there's preparation, and then there's playing. That makes sense?
Oh, you mean practice to learn, prepare to play to win.
You got it.
Whoever said that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I know that you added Guadagnoli. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's the one that did. I just added the little preparation to play.
Yeah.
Because practice to me is different. Practice is learning. And preparation is like getting ready mentally, physically, skill set wise to go to that first tee box. And then playing to win. Win doesn't mean necessarily win the trophy. For some people it is. Sometimes it's a personal record, like the best score you've ever shot or the lowest number of putts you've ever had. Do you see what I'm saying? Or the highest strokes gained putting you've ever had. That makes sense? So like playing to win is like achievement and growth.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
And then what's interesting is my practice is different. My wife's like, I don't know how you can sit there and she goes, don't you want to just take off? She goes, how can you sit there and do wedges all the way down Easy Street? Like that. She goes, I said, yeah, it kills my legs to do it.
Yeah.
But she goes, you're so disciplined and like you're so deep and deliberate in the way you practice. I said, that's how you practice. You don't get it by thinking about it. You get it by deeply like being engaged with what you're doing, immersed into what you're doing.
That's the word I was just thinking about. Right.
Yeah.
Immersed.
She's like, you're so like, she goes, I can't believe you do that. And then all of a sudden, like in a few more runs, then you just rip by everybody. Like, well, I'm not ripping by anybody until I'm ready. Like when I've got that balance front to back, laterally, I've got that edge. So if I've got balance laterally and I've got my edge grip, then I can bend the ski.
Yeah.
And if I can bend the ski, then I can control how much I'm turning.
But don't the people that get into it at that level, at that deliberate level, have fun when they're doing that in a different way because they know what it does for them?
Absolutely. So one of the ski instructors, Dr. Mark,
yeah,
he comes up to me, he goes, I love watching you practice. I watch you on the lift every run that I'm out there. And he goes, I can't get my students to do what you're doing. And I said, well, I'm doing it because I want to learn. I want to do it better. I said, watch these wedges. So I get in a snowplow like a beginner, except I got my arms in a different position than beginners. I look like I'm holding on to hugging a tree. You know what I'm saying? My arms are like right, and then I'm edging and I'm laterally bending, and my skis are really gripping. He goes, man, your wedges are awesome. So here's a ski instructor who's sitting there going, I can't even get my students to do that. And I don't have, here's the interesting thing. I could go rip arcs and not prepare and not, you know what I'm saying? I can go just putt. I can just go ski. Right. But the discipline, the depth of the practice and the deliberate, it pays dividends. Huge, especially when it comes to racing, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, another thing. So getting fit for a putter. Junior golfers, the number one thing you do with a junior in a junior program is you get the length right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And we've talked about how to do that, measuring wrist to floor and et cetera as a starting point. And then getting not just the right length, the right lie and the right loft, but the right size grip. These juniors have come into me I teach hundreds of juniors and I weigh my putter and their putter's heavier than mine. I show them my grip and they look at their grip and I'm look at my fingers and your hands. The worst thing you can do for a junior is let them putt with a fat grip. Number one, right off the bat. So the first thing for a junior golfer, and even maybe the average golfer, right? Get the right length, the right lie, the right loft, and the right size grip. And then the overall weight. Just start with those 5 things right there. So, I've had a little bit of an evolution to my thinking on overall weight. Obviously, blade putters should be light, and the grips should be small. Mallets can be heavy, and the grips can be bigger. That makes sense. So okay. I just think a matchup of the head weight and the grip weight, which as a club fitter is a big deal. Just even regular clubs, right?
Yeah.
So getting the head weight and the grip weights to kind of balance the club good. And then obviously the square backs and the mid-size grips are kind of a good match too. So that's just a general rule of thumb that I use. I did measure a guy came in. He actually is part owner of a putter company and he kind of disguised it with a private lesson. He wanted to get a private lesson. Really what he wanted to do was show me his line of putters.
Yeah.
Hey, at least he paid for my time, right?
That's right.
So what's interesting is I weighed, it's called MOI Max, MAXX.
Uh-huh.
And I weighed his first prototype and the overall weight was 847 grams.
Oh my God.
And I putt with 504.
Right.
And Tiger's is under 500, I think. Fax's is 492 and Utley's is under 500 as well. So a lot of your good putters, like Fax actually uses a studio design grip. It's actually smaller than the Ping PP58 grip.
Yeah.
And so you look at Utley's grip, small grip, Faxon's grip, small grip, Tiger's grip, small grip, my grip. I'm not in their level, but I use a small grip. I think if you hold the club more in your fingers or with your fingers, you want a smaller grip. If you hold it more along your palm with your fingers down the shaft, you can get away with a fatter grip. But bigger grips do slow down rotation. Bigger grips also kind of, you lose a little bit of head feel.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So 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 in skiing, the most important piece of equipment is your boots. Most people are in boots. They go with their shoe size. Okay. You actually need to go less than your shoe size. You actually want your toes to touch the end a little bit. And then when you dorsiflex your ankle, the heel moves back in the pocket a little bit, moves away from the thing. So I'm actually in a size 8.
Oh, jeez.
Ski boot.
Yeah.
I'm a 9.5 sneaker, but I'm in a size 8. And they're still a little too big.
Wow.
So, and then getting the right, what are the things? So I've learned so much about the feet and the lower leg and the upper leg, because we didn't test that in our 3D research with putting. We just did remember everything stopped.
We kept everything stable below the, basically kind of below the waist.
So stable versus still are two different things.
Right.
Stable means it's not going to fall over. Right? But you can still move a little bit. Empire State Building's still moving a little bit. It's stable. I think you're only still with the lower body on the short putts, but as the putt gets longer, your lower body's going to move a little bit. And some people are sliding or swaying side to side with their lower body, and some people are turning, or we talk about roundhousing, right?
Right.
So you kind of want to separate the upper body from the lower body in putting, which is the same thing in skiing.
Yeah.
So the separation or disassociation between I can turn my torso without moving my pelvis and my legs that much on a short putt, and then be able to separate the shoulder girdle turning and tilt turning, and the neck and the head being fairly stable. So this concept of being able to separate movements from one segment above versus the segment below. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about that a lot.
Yeah. So separation is a better word than disassociation.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Because that's really what you're doing, is you're disassociating, being able, can I move this segment above this joint without moving the segment below? That makes sense?
Yeah.
So separation is just a better word. Can you move them separately? That makes sense?
Yeah.
So we say you marry your boots and you date your skis. So, if you can get 100 to 150 ski days out of a pair of boots, you're doing pretty good. So yes, I've learned a lot about the feet, things I never would have learned in golf. I mean, they do have pressure plates, ground reaction forces, and that kind of stuff. But to actually understand like the medial arch, the lateral arch, the transverse arch of the foot, how, if somebody's slightly pronated, supinated, if they have a Q angle of their femur, like ladies tend to do. They have a wider pelvis, so they have the Q angle of the femur to the lower leg is kind of knock-kneed looking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Versus kind of an O angle, which is like cowboy. So you either look like you got to go potty, right? You're holding a P, or you look like a cowboy. And that Q angle and how you stand on your arches has a huge determination on the width of stance you should be having with your putting. Okay. So that's kind of what I look at when I say, hey, bring your feet together and see what touches first, your ankles or your knees. You know what I mean? So my knees touch before my ankles do, so that I have a slight Q angle. So how the width of stance that I'm going to have versus somebody that's cowboy is going to be different. And then the type of shoe that they should have. So a lot of shoes have drop, if that makes sense, from heel to toe.
Mm-hmm.
So that can really disrupt your balance front to back on your feet. So a person that has a very long femur and a short torso is going to tend to be on their heels. And if a person has short legs and a long torso, they're going to tend to be out over their toes more. So the body proportion. So I never would learn this stuff if I didn't learn from my ski instructor.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so he just kind of filled in kind of like the rest of the body for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Because I've studied it all the way out to the thumbs and the forefingers and the middle fingers and all that kind of stuff. But I learned a lot about the platform basis support from him. And then after getting my equipment dialed in, it was time to test it in competition. You know what I mean? I wanted to feel those feelings again, if that makes sense.
Right.
So let me pull up some of my statistics here real quick. So I hadn't been in a race course since I was 16, and I'm 54. So first time I got in a race course, I actually medaled, but my handicap was a 42. And it was a short course. It was only 13 gates. And for those of you listening, 13 gates, not very long. So a gate would be, those double poles with a panel, and you draw a line from one to the next one, and that's a gate. So when you cross through that gate, that would be a completion, so to speak. So what's interesting, so I got my handicap from a 42 all the way down to a 16. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of your times, depending on the course setup, right? If there's more offset in the gates versus a straight course and the condition of the snow. So what's interesting is I was all pumped up coming out the next year, right? So I improved from 42 to 16. I'm all stoked. Come out with expectations that I'm going to do, I'm going to be a 16 handicap, right?
You mean like golfers, right?
Just like golfers. I'm a 16. I get in that first race and I'm back up to a 40.
Wow.
But I felt fast.
Huh.
I felt fast. But I looked at my time and I was slow. Then it went up to 43. And then I said, I got to do something different. So I started working more on my mental skills as well as my skiing skills, if that makes sense. And I said, okay, let's start inspecting the course. So they do let you go inside the rope and it's like a practice round.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Right.
I inspected the course and I said, okay, I'm going to skate and chop my turns for the first two gates, and my third turn is going to be my first turn. So see how I had a plan?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? I had a plan, a task, if that makes sense. So then I kind of looked at where I could pick up speed and where I needed to watch, scrub some speed off. So ready? My times went from 42. Okay.
Yeah.
Next race, 41. Next race, 38. Next race, 37. These are the times, not the handicap.
Right.
Next race, 36. And the last race, 35, 5-3. And got my handicap down in the 20s again. So it wasn't as good as that. I had the most improvement last year.
Yeah.
I had the most improvement the first year of racing. This is beer league racing. Okay. This is better than NASTAR because NASTAR includes everybody that wants to go down through the gates.
Yeah.
And I typically would finish in the top 20, if that makes sense, out of maybe 60 or 80 racers.
Yeah.
But my best finish was 12th, and I looked in beer league, my best finish was 12th out of 60. And I looked at the guys that finished in front of me, and everybody skied either on the U.S. ski team, the U.S. ski team developmental team, or they skied at Dartmouth, Bates College, 3 of them at Montana State. So any of you skiers out there know that these are legitimate skiers that have trained in ski racing. So I was the only person to finish 12th. The 11 people that finished in front of me all had formal race training. So I realized that was about as good as I was going to get. Does that make sense?
But that's okay, right?
Yes, because look at how much I had improved.
Yeah.
And then the second time around, it was more about mental skills, like dealing with fear.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is there's certain parts of our course. We got 2 pitches and a flat with another pitch. And we're going anywhere from 35 to 45 miles an hour, depending on where you are in the course. So you wipe out, you're going to get hurt. And my wife reminds me of that every race, by the way.
Yeah.
But I do want to share with you one story. So talk about mental skills, controlling your narrative. So it was really icy out, and I was inspecting the course. I'm like, why are you doing this? You're 54 years old. What if you tear your ACL? You know what I mean? Like every negative thing that could be said.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So I inspected the course. I get in the start house, and I was bib number 13, but they did a shuffle. So I got to come out like second. Okay. So I come out. So there's only one skier in front of me on the course. It's like having fresh greens, right?
Yeah.
So I'm in the start house and I get mad. I said, you know what? Just ski the course just the way you planned it. That was my best run.
Yeah.
So what's funny is I went in a second from being negative Nancy to just do your job. My whole mindset changed.
Yeah. Compete.
Yeah. Just do your job.
Yeah.
Quit worrying about what you're trying to achieve and start doing your damn job.
Yeah.
And that is a major mental hurdle that most people don't understand is, yeah, I got this 4-foot putt. I know you want to make it, but that's not your job. Your job's to read the break direction, the break amount, hit it with an intended speed, hit it on a certain line, and then execute a pure stroke. That's it. That's your job. And you have to learn to do that. So that was a huge, I told Rick Sessinghouse this we were at the Players Championship. I said, I've learned more about the mental skills from skiing than I ever did from golf.
Huh.
And how important they are. So if I had to do this all over again, I would have spent way more time working on my mental skills.
In a way, isn't there a little bit more on the line when you're skiing about the mental skills and the fears and stuff? I mean, yeah, you think, of course.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is, okay, so I want to share another thing with you. You reach a point where you're so scared that you're no longer scared. We talk about a flow state. So like in ski racing, the hardest part with golf is the walk in between shots and the narrative that you try to create with your buddies. You're always trying to create a better narrative, right? Oh, well, I just didn't hit it solid, or, you know, there I go again. You know what I mean? It's like this Scooby-Doo narrative, right? Same old thing, different week. Yeah. But what's interesting in ski racing is you can't afford to think about the past turn, and you can't get ahead of yourself. You have to stay right in the present, and it gets so quiet. That it's unbelievable. So it's funny. My teammates, they go, man, you looked so fast. And I said, no, I felt slow. And they're like, no, you looked fast. And even your time was fast. So what's funny is mentally, when I feel slow, I'm fast. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm mentally slow. Things are going through my mind slowly, right? Clearly. It's almost like the snow. You can almost look at the crystal, like that particular crystal. I'm going to turn there. You know what I mean? And then, but yeah, when I feel like I'm trying to go fast, like I'm trying to ski fast, my times are horrible. They're slow. So it's that paradigm or that paradox of time.
Yeah.
When you're in the right place mentally, things do slow down, but you're playing fast. You're not holding anybody up. Yeah. I think what holds people up is they got all these racing thoughts that they have to, these irrelevant thoughts that they have to think about over the putt. And they're taking like a minute to hit their putt. You know, I have one feel at address, and I have a picture for my backswing or a feel for my backswing, and I have a feel for my downswing, and that's it in putting.
Yeah.
That's it. So you can have a lot of pictures and feels, but not a lot of thoughts. I think I'd write that down. You actually want to convert your thoughts.
That's the first time you said that tonight.
What's that?
I think I'd write that down.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for people out there that have a lot of racing thoughts going on. Is you're trying to, it's like a PC. This is why I don't like PCs.
Yeah.
Can you imagine too many programs running on a PC? What happens?
Slows down.
Well, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Right.
You're thinking so much. You're trying to get it all in there. And most of it's irrelevant, meaning it doesn't even pertain to you really. And it's causing you to take up too much time on the putting green. Versus, okay, I got this one thought at address, this one picture, or one feel, and that's it.
And then go.
And then go. There's clarity, right?
Yeah.
So if I had to do this all over again, physically, was I capable? Absolutely. I hit the ball far for my size. I drive it exceptional. I grew up in the age of the Bellata ball. I grew up in the age of persimmon woods. I grew up in the age where a 1-iron is today's 3-iron.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know, I was just talking with Alex Smalley, one of my PGA Tour players, and he's like, yeah, I hit my 3-iron when I got to hit it straight. Like, that's a 1-iron, dude. That's what that is. The loft is, and it's easier to hit. Yeah. It's not like a Ben Hogan Apex PC 1-iron. But getting back to what I'm saying is you want to go there with one thought of address is fine, one feel, but take the thought and make it a feel or a picture. That makes sense?
Yeah.
It's when you have all this verbal discussion narrative going on that really gets players in trouble. Okay, so we kind of went through some of the process of learning. So how long did it take me?
What, two or 3 years?
Well, it took me 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm better than I was when I was younger. Matter of fact, I ski with my ski patrol. They know who I am coming down the mountain because they go, who's the guy with the best technique? Not the fastest guy on the mountain. Did you hear what I said? I'm not the fastest, but technique-wise, I got a lot of bag of tricks.
Yeah.
And they know. When they come down the mountain, they know who it is. And one of the ski patrollers, who's a good friend of mine, who's taking golf lessons from me, she goes, if you could see how much different you ski now than you did 2.5 years ago, she goes, it's absolutely amazing. You know what I mean? So It's noticeable to others, right? That should be the same thing with your putting improvement. That your foursome's like, man, how'd you get better at putting? Come over here and read this putt for me. You know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of what's going on with my junior golfers. I never intended to teach juniors, okay?
Yeah.
I teach tour players. Got it?
Yeah.
But one of my juniors, he goes out and wins. Then what do you think? I get 5 of his friends, right? And then one of them gets better. They go without any 3 putts for a tournament, 4-round tournament, no 3 putts. And then I get 3 or 4 of their friends. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And what's funny is, I'm a particular with my juniors when it comes to putter fitting, their grip, their stance, their alignment, their stroke, their skill set. Like, I'm teaching them like I do somebody that's ranked top 10 in the world. I'm not teaching them like a junior golfer. I'm teaching them to be elite.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you look at you've seen my before and afters on my Facebook.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And that not only do they look good, but they're performing well. They're executing. So one of the things that we talk about with my juniors is you got to stop focusing on what you're trying to achieve. You've got to learn to do your job. You've got to learn to stand there with your big boy pants on, read the putt, predict the break direction, what's the speed I'm going to hit this, what's the line I'm going to hit it on, and then go do your job. Like, in other words, focusing more on the task rather than the achievement.
Yeah. And then accept and reflect and go on.
Yeah. And then training them not to react.
Right.
But to react with feedback, recall, and recognition. And that's really my litmus test is when a kid can hit putts, whether they make it or not, we judge the execution of it.
Yeah.
And what's funny is it's like the opposite of what everybody else is trying to do. Everybody else is worried about making it because it's so binary. You either make it or you miss it. That's why statistics don't tell the whole story. They don't tell the difficulty of the putt.
Yeah.
I just had Alex Smalley in. We just did 4 hours. And I gave him a bunch of up and overs, crowns, because he's talking about 3 putting. And I said, okay, I'm going to put you 20 feet away, but you got to go up and over this crown and the holes on the back side. And he's like, I can't get it close. I'm like, no kidding. I said, yeah, but a strokes gain, that just goes as a missed 20-footer. It doesn't say that it had to go up over a 3 and 4% slope and back down the other side. Strokes gained is just missed 20-footer. It's just missed. and then I go put him on a fairly plainer part of the green, and he looks world class again. So we did a lot of work on lag and leaves. We did a lot of those today, and he started to really understand that it's not just about the distance, but the speed. It's not just about hitting at 20 feet. It's hitting at 20 feet down the slope or up the slope. And did you see the post I made with the guy this past week where I said,
you said, what are the differences A, B, C, D, E, right?
Yeah. So were the different length putts was A.
Yeah.
B, same length putts. C, uphill into the grain, downhill, down grain. Or D, both B and C. Did you know that both of those putts were 30 footers?
I thought they were going to be the same length, but either uphill or downhill.
Yeah, but look at how different not only is the lag or
how
the
much
length of
the effort,
the force that has to be applied uphill versus the force applied downhill.
Yeah.
Because the effective stimp on that 3% was like 21 effective stimp downhill and like 8.5 uphill. Yeah. That's what people didn't know. So they're just looking at the video, go, well, they're two different length strokes. They're two different length putts. No, they're not. They were just right around 30 feet, right around 10 paces. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And then the reason why he had to apply more force is if you look at the one uphill, he had some forward lean. So he's actually
he's de-lofting the putter. Okay.
Into the slope, into the grain. Therefore, he had to hit it even harder.
Yeah.
So the fix for him was getting the shaft back to zero, and then launching the putt up the slope. And then all of a sudden his balls, instead of being 2 or 3 feet short, were actually going 3 foot by.
Wow.
So really it was a friction thing.
Yeah.
A loft and friction thing. And that's what Viv Wadden's going to talk about at the conference in December. So far I have a verbal commit from Brad Faxon.
Yeah.
And Bev's going to do this coefficient of friction because it's really not about the distance that golfers are struggling with. I see a beginner struggles with distance, but I take them to a flat green and learn distance control and learn to judge distance. So like I'll say, how long is this putt? I make them judge it first before they pace it. So it's judge, then pace. Don't just pace. So they'll say, oh, this is 20 feet. And I'll go pace it off. They'll go, oh, it's 31 feet. I'm like, okay, so your stats are accurate.
Yeah.
You're putting in there a missed 20 footer and it's 31 feet. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't trust these amateur stats worth a lick, to be honest with you, Tony.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
I really don't. Now, the tour stats are accurate because they're using lasers and shot tracker and that kind of stuff, right? So the tour stats are pretty legit, but that's a different podcast when we start talking about should you be comparing your putting stats to a tour player? The answer is no.
Yeah, they're in another world.
Yeah, and I think Scott Fawcett and Lou Stogner, those guys are doing more amateur stats. They're doing a pretty good job with Decade.
Yeah.
Decade has its place. It's good for strategy. So the learning process, number one, it's going to take time. How long? I don't know. But I can tell you right now that the vast majority of my junior golfers have spent 2, 3, 4, 5 years with me. That's why they're better. They don't just come take one lesson and then, I took a lesson from David Orr, I'm better.
Yeah.
No, they actually took a lesson, did what I asked them to do. They practiced deep and deliberate. Then they come back and take another lesson. And do you think we have to review some things on consecutive lessons? Absolutely. But the better their understanding and the more relevant the information is, the better they get. I do very well with very intelligent students. I do very well with people that practice deep and deliberate. I don't do well with people that come looking for a tip, wanting to take a lesson from a PGA Tour coach, David Orr, and they pay their $500 for the hour and I never see them again because they're just looking for, should I use the line on the ball or not?
Yeah.
Do I got the right putter for me or not? If not, I'll go buy one out of the pro shop. I've had people order putters right after the fitting, like they've already ordered it.
Wow.
And the lesson's not even over.
Jeez.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think today our podcast, some of the main points that I talked about with my learning with skiing applies to putting and golf in general. Get fitted for your putters. The issue is, though, if you go to 10 different putter fitters, you're probably going to have 10 different specs and designs. Make sense?
Yeah. Well, it's not helpful, but it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the litmus test? Can they demonstrate and explain? Are they selling me Kool-Aid, and am I drinking the Kool-Aid or not? You know what I mean? We do get a lot of Kool-Aid drinkers out there, right? They're just drinking the latest Kool-Aid. What's the latest and greatest fad? I will say one thing about Lab Golf. Sam Hahn's a great guy. And he's made me a bunch of putters. He wants so bad for me to be putting with a Lab Golf putter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they make great putters. And if I were to putt with a low rotation stroke, and if I were to go claw, I probably would use one of those. But with my conventional stroke, because I've got some transverse and some lateral rotation in my shoulder joints, I've got to have a putter that opens and closes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, they make, every time they send me something, I'm telling you what, the quality of which they make their products and the quality of which they send their products, unbelievable. Now, the late Byron Morgan, who I love dearly, passed away over a year ago. He making me these $1,200 German stainless steel putters that are absolutely beautiful, and he just throws them in the box and sends them to you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But no, there's a lot of good putter makers out there. I'll tell you what, another company I've become very impressed with is Bentonardi.
Yeah.
They've been around a long time. Their BB1F, the flow neck blade that they have, unbelievable. Their BB1 is unbelievable. Their Queen Bee number 6, that square back with a little single bend in it, unbelievable. Yeah. Especially if you're really neutral with your stroke, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have a mallet, another Queen Bee that's like a semi-mallet with a short hobble, unbelievably good. Their Innove. The only thing I've ever been a little, and I called Sam on this, Sam Bentonardi. I said, man, don't put grooves on every putter you make. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some of them's fine, but if you go, like, I could literally pick 6 heads out of their line and make me a putter fitting system. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just their line.
Yeah. Wow.
And then Sick putters. They've kind of like, David Adele, I like his classic fitting system.
Right.
But he had to go a little more commercial when he was it with Golf Galaxy, or who was it that he was with, that he had to produce those? Can't remember.
Putters. I don't know who the other system is.
Yes, the torque balance putters.
Right.
Were made out of necessity for a fitting system for like Golf Galaxy or some of those bigger places. Might have gotten which company's wrong, but yeah. But David Adele makes wonderful custom putters too, especially the ones he makes by hand are phenomenal. Tad Moore still makes beautiful putters. David Mills, if you're willing to wait. You know what I'm saying? Lamont Mann. There's a few other people out there that are really good too. If I were to do a blade, I would do custom. If I were to do a mallet or a square back, I'd probably do OEM. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Because there's so many mallets to choose from.
Enormous number. That's right.
Yeah. You want it with 3 lines, triple track, or do you want it with two ball, or do you want it with Versa? Like, that Phil Kenyon, who's a good friend of mine, just did a nice video on the Versa alignment, the perpendicular alignment with the Versa, the multicolored Versa there,
right?
Black, white, black, or whatever. That's a great concept as well. Odyssey, obviously, number 1 putter maker in sales, but is that because of sales, or do they make the best putters? I don't know. Phil thinks they do, so I'll let him think that. I like their Toulon Garage thing. That's pretty cool. So if you want to do upgrade, right, customize it, that's a nice little tool. But I think getting the right putter, or at least a better putter. You know what I mean? Like, this guy shows up with an 847, and then his other prototype was 725. I said, well, here, just go to that next. You know what I mean? And then I'll get them down to 600, and then we'll probably stay at just under 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this thing was unbelievable. It was the heaviest thing. Here's what's interesting though. I putted with it. It felt good, but my speed skill just went out the window. I'm almost world class with the speed. Not quite, but almost. Speed control has always been pretty good with me because I have a little load to my transition of my stroke. My biggest problem was a tendency to a pull bias, such aiming a little more to the right. So, but the process of learning, how long does it take? Well, I mean, to me, the journey's worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're two or so years down the road of this, and what a ball. Years.
Yeah. And then here's the thing about it is my goal was to see how good I could get, right? Well, now in competition, I can't go back and train for 20 years on gates. You know what I mean? I go look at we went and skied at Whiteface. And my wife are going up the lift, and there's the race hill, and they've got 100 gates that these kids are turning on every day, every morning.
Wow.
Because they have ski academies like golf academies where you ski in the morning and you go to school in the afternoon.
Yeah. And
with golf academies, it's go to school in the morning and golf in the afternoon. Did I say that right? Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, these kids pay $70,000 to go to these ski academies, and it doesn't matter if it's icy and perfect snow or not. They're making turns, right?
Yeah.
So it's like these kids with the golf academy. Some of the time that you invest in it, and then the deep and deliberate practice, and then testing it, like competitively. Because what's interesting is I have learned that even if you work at it really hard and diligently, usually the old habits creep in. Like, remember how I went back to a 40 handicap first run?
Yeah.
First race of the season, right? It's because I did my old stuff. And I just went back to what I'd learned and got back, and it came back quicker. So you're always in this process of having it, losing it, having it, not losing it for as long, then having it, and then only maybe, that bad habit only happened once in a while. But to think that you're going to practice to the point where it never reappears is a lie. Your old tendencies will always show up when you're nervous.
A terrible expectation to have. Right.
Well, but the thing is, you want to get so many reps that it's less prevalent.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Or that you can correct on the run, adaptability, right?
Yeah. Right.
So like, for instance, my tendency in putting is for the ball to be forward, too far forward, the shaft to be back towards the middle of my body. So I have shaft lean issues. That makes sense?
Yeah.
I have to calibrate that every day. Every day I got to make sure the ball position, the shaft lean are fine, and make sure I don't have too much lag in the transition to where I'm delofted at impact. See, the good player's problem is usually delofted at impact, launching it into the slope. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And the bad player, well, they have no problem up the slope because they tend to add loft.
Right.
That makes sense? So it's about learning your tendencies, learning what to correct, when to correct it, and therefore it doesn't take so long to correct it. But it will show up when you're nervous. And which gets to my final point is pressure. It's perceived pressure. That makes sense?
It's not.
I'm only racing in a beer league. I'm not racing in the Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm not racing in the World Cup, and I'm not racing. Those guys and girls are unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even close. I'm just worrying about being one of the top skiers at my mountain. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And it's a little mountain. So same thing with being a golfer. It's like being one of the best players at your club, right? Or the best player in your area, or the best player in your state, and then the best player in your region, and then the best player in the country, and then being one of the better players in the world. And then I've seen that, obviously, working for, 3 Ryder Cup players and 2 Solheim Cup players. I know what that looks like, working for former world number 1, Justin Rose. So I know what that looks like. You know what I mean? When I'm working with a junior, I know kind of where they are.
Yeah.
And it might not be where they think they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. They need to not expect it to be at that other level.
Yeah, well, they're not
So,
there yet, and that's
yeah.
why I developed. That's why I developed the 10 skill levels. Did you notice that slide with the practice plan?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. So in skiing, there are different skill levels, right? Well, golf doesn't have that. Golf has a handicap that you submit your scores, and you can fudge them all you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Guys manipulate their handicap on a daily basis. You know, I get a ton of people that come up to me and say, "Yeah, I'm a 4," and then I watch them putt and go, "There's no way they're a 4." Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then I have some guys that come to me that are a 2 handicap. I'm like, if you got your head out of your backside, you'd be +1 because you're that good. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah. How about doing some practice? How about working at this? I'm like, I mean, how much did you practice this week? I didn't. And you're coming for a lesson? Do you think the lesson's gonna take care of that problem? Yeah, I just want to get the right tip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, just give me a tip here to help me with my putting. Tell me what putter I got to use. Like, dude, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Go take an aim point class and figure out which foot's lower. Let's get the break direction right first. Can you go an entire? Here's a good stat for our listeners. Can you go an entire round and get the break direction correct on every putt that you hit? How about that stat?
Yeah.
Because you know what? I asked Rosie that last year when I was traveling with him. He goes, around? He goes, I can go weeks. He goes, I can go weeks without misreading the break direction. How about that?
Well,
But let's just, for our listeners, start with a round. And then let's go two rounds. And then a four round tournament. Like, that's how good you got to become. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another interesting thing. I debrief my players that I work with on tour after, usually I give them till Monday or Tuesday. You know what I mean? But it's funny, the caddy's yelling fire. We got to work on this. Got to work on this. Do you see where he finished strokes gained? He missed 9 putts inside of 10 feet. He had 3 putts. That's the text I got from the caddy. Got it?
Yeah.
You want to know what I heard from the player? You ready for this?
Okay.
Because proximity to the hole this week was an issue because I was never close enough to make anything.
Ah. So here's
How about that?
Realistic. Right.
Oh my gosh. So the caddy's throwing all these stats at me. Like, there's a fire, there's a problem, right? And my player's like, proximity to the hole. Yeah, I just wasn't close enough this week. And then I get him on the Sam Putt Lab and he pumps out zeros, 90s across the board, 80, high 80s, 90s on the Sam. Like, the stroke's zeroed out. Like, the stroke's not the problem. How about that? So the caddy's throwing all these stats at me, yelling, fire, got to work on this, got to work on that. Nothing wrong with the stroke.
Yeah.
How about that?
So
if there's nothing wrong with the stroke mechanics, if the technique's fine, why did he finish negative 0.5 stroke gain this week? Because he hit it on the wrong side of the slope, right? He had up and overs and 60 foot away and 50 foot away and 30 foot away. You know what I mean? And you're going to 3-putt. If you're hanging out at that 30 to 65 foot range, the best in the world are going to 3-putt occasionally. So you bet your bottom dollar that the average golfer who thinks a 30-foot putt's a 20-foot putt, and that's what goes in their stats, is a missed 20-footer. No. So anyway, any questions from you, Tony, real quick? You want to kind of do a quick summary on this?
Questions. I don't think so. I mean, I think you just got to do the work if you're really gonna be where you want to be.
Yeah. So let's do a summary of main points real fast.
Yeah.
Process of learning, knowing that it's going to be a process, right?
Yep.
How good do you want to be? That's the first question.
Yeah.
How long is it going to take?
As long as it takes.
It takes as long as it takes. And are you having fun while you're learning? Right? I've had a lot of fun. Right? Now, number 1, find the best information on the internet. That's why Flat Stick Academy was created. There's a lot of information on putting. There's websites out there that have more information, right? Correct?
Yeah.
But what information is relevant to you versus irrelevant? You can tell. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So find some really good forums. Like GolfWorks was a good forum. Lots of good YouTube videos out there. That's how people find me, like through the Eric Corgono series.
Right. Yeah. He did a lot of great ones with you.
Yeah. So I just did a few videos for him. And I wish, they were some good ones. Because it was just different information. That's what a lot of people tell me when they watch those videos. They're just different. And then find the website that you think is going to help you out with the information. Then find an instructor that can both demonstrate and explain. If they can explain it, fine, but they need to be able to demonstrate. That's the litmus test. Lee Trevino said one time, "I'll never take a lesson from anybody that can't beat me." So therefore, he ended up being self-taught.
Yeah, right.
Right? Which really kind of is what we should be doing. I feel like even though I had this online instructor, that I really did my own teaching of my own self, kind of with his guidance, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So online lessons do work. And if you can't get to see me and you want to do an online lesson, either myself or Matt Roberts will do it for you. Just got to figure out the time to do it, but they do work. It's better than nothing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or better than a bad lesson.
Yeah, better than a bad lesson, right? Oh, don't even get me started about ski instructors. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then doing your dry land training at home, right? Doing your work on your mechanics with your putting mat in your kitchen, down your hardwood floor, if you might have a nice studio like I have. But do your work kind of dry land, meaning not on the putting green. That makes sense? Yeah. Then when you go to the putting green, it is skill work. It is process and routine. It's the mental skills, right? Yep. And then, the next point to take away is keep working on your basic skills. Take aim point. If you struggle with green reading, go take an aim point class. Use it as a tool. I tell my players all the time, it doesn't have to be your process, but it could be a tool that when you need it, you're not sure. So say, for instance, I'm on a green, it's like severe slope, and it's like a 5. I'll put my 5 fingers up there and bend my arm and go, oh my gosh, that's way more than I would have played. You know what I mean? I've been watching I watch 2,000 balls roll a week, which don't get me started on why that works.
Yeah.
I think the number of balls you watch roll out a week matter. And then making sure your practice is deep and deliberate. I could go rip black runs and blue runs right off the bat, but working deeply and deliberate when I practice. I'm not practicing slowly. I'm practicing deeply. I'm very immersed into what I'm doing, as opposed to being self-conscious and worrying about what I look like. I don't care what I look like. I care about what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing while learning. And then obviously getting fitted. We talked about that. And then working on the mental skills. And then obviously, go test yourself. Go play in the club championship. Go play in the member guest if you want to do it with a friend. Just get a little bit of the feel of the nerves, which you should feel. If you're not nervous, there's something wrong with you. That makes sense?
Yeah. I thought the one thing you said about, that some people get so nervous that they just get to the point where they don't feel it anymore. I mean, that's where the hot shots really are getting, right? I mean, they feel it, but they just adapt to it.
Well, it's like there's a switch that goes on. That's all I could tell from ski racing. It's like, it's funny. It's like the skis reach a point of like where they're chattering and you're nervous and you're feeling out of control. And then all of a sudden, the faster you go, the more stable it is.
Yeah.
The quieter it is. It's just like a phenomenon. Same thing in putting, though. You get so nervous to the point where you just almost black out. Like, I can remember my first tee shot in a Ben Hogan Tour event. It was my first professional event. I Monday qualified. I guess it's now what tour is it? Web.com or what is it?
Yeah.
Corn Ferry? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first tee, roped off, gallery, David Orr from up, Plasky, New York. And then the only thing I can remember is the ball sitting there, and I could see I was playing Mizuno driver at the time. The last thing I saw was the crown saying Mizuno, and then I'm in my finish, and the ball's going straight down the middle of the fairway, about 285.
Wow.
But what happened in between then, I couldn't tell you what happened. I couldn't tell you what the backswing looked like or it felt like, because I was completely that nervous. That makes sense? So it's almost like the survival skills kick in.
Yeah.
I think that might be what it is the fight, flight, or freeze instinct kicks in at a certain point. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And things just calm down. But yeah, the faster I go, I reach a certain point, then it just goes, okay, well, this isn't going to be good if I wipe out. But do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. My wife, she's like, I don't know why you're doing this. You're 54 years old and you're racing and you're doing it every week and, you're going to get hurt. Like, yeah, I know. You know what I'm saying? So
but you're testing yourself and you're learning.
I am. And I also know I did get hurt one time this year. I didn't fall, but my back did compress like an accordion on a rut.
Ooh.
In other words, I hit a rut in the course really hard, about 2-footer, and my spine compressed, and I couldn't. That was the only race I haven't finished. My only DNF in 2.5 years, but I knew it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I knew it, and I skied out, and I'm like, okay, you're not taking a second run, you're done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hopefully, this podcast will help people understand that if you really want to get good, it doesn't matter how old you are. That's a myth. That makes sense? I'm a better putter now than I was when I was 21, without question. That makes sense?
Yeah.
My stroke is better. I got data on Capto and Sam Putt Lab to prove it. You know what I mean? I've been through a couple hundred putters. I finally got a tad more that's Excalibur. It's the Stradivarius, right?
Yeah.
So I just use the process. It is a process, and use the process and trust the process and refine your skills and refine your technique and find the right putter and find the right coach. I'm not the right coach for everybody. I know that, Tony.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Besides that, I can't teach everybody. There's a lot of people to teach, right? But how long is it going to take? Well, does it matter? If you just want to get better, you just keep getting better. So thank you for having me on this one. The process of learning, even if it's from a different sport, that was pretty cool.
I thought it was a lot of fun to do, so I'm glad you did it. So that's great.
The Golf Improvement Podcast is sponsored by Tony Wright and Game Improvement Golf. Tony creates exceptional golf clubs. You shoot lower scores.
David, thank you for this wonderful deep dive into your skiing learning process experience and also sharing how golfers can apply this to their efforts to improve their putting. You also shared quite a lot of valuable putting improvement information in this episode. I shared in the show notes the link to the Flat Stick Academy website where you can find out more about being an Academy subscriber, scheduling a lesson specifically with David, or scheduling a lesson with a Flat Stick certified instructor near to you. And yes, I'm one of those. My shout out today is to me. I'm 7 weeks into my knee replacement surgery recovery. I never expected it to take this long, but I'm about 3 weeks now from graduation. The rehab has been tough work, way more difficult than I expected it to be, but I'm excited I've gone through this experience. And I'm looking forward to getting back to a more normal life and future golf. If this podcast and all of my podcasts and blog posts benefit you, remember that there's a Support the Golf Improvement Podcast link in the show notes for this episode. Your support for a much-needed upgrade to my 2012 iMac podcasting computer would be greatly appreciated. Well, that's it for today. On Friday, April 7, I look forward to posting episode 209 with Peter Arnaud, writer of the excellent and interesting new ebook, Swing Like Tiger. Until then, take care, God bless Ukraine, and God bless America.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com